Hello, everybody. I'm Valerie Gilchrist, and this is Esther's Purpose. My guest today is Clift Townsend, but before we bring on Clift, we're going to let you know that we are broadcasting from WYTV7 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. WYTV7 is a nonprofit organization, so we would really appreciate your donation so that we can continue to not only bring on my broadcast, but we have many broadcasters here on WYTV7 that need your support to bring those messages of encouragement. Also, I want you to know that even though we're a nonprofit, we also support other nonprofits in what they're doing as well. So when your seed comes in to seed into what we're doing here at WYTV7, is not just all about us. It's about other organizations as well. So my guest today is Clift Townsend. I brought Clift on. You all know the last two shows I've had Brian Oles on, who is the founder of Black Speakers Network, and we've been talking about the book, Speak Up, The Ultimate Guide to Dominate in the Speaking Industry. My last guest was Altaviz Pelzer, so you all have met her. Now you're going to meet Clift Townsend. So I want to introduce him. Clift Townsend is an award-winning filmmaker, founding partner of the world-renowned Les Brown Institute, best-selling co-author of the book Speak Up. Today, Clift is the founder of Boss Academy for Women, which is an online platform that supports women to be seen, be heard, and dominate their space. Welcome. Hi, Clift. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Val. Thank you for having me on this platform.
Oh, I'm just so grateful that you came on with us, because we actually, I know you all should know by now that pretty much everybody who comes on my show, I have got some type of relationship with them. It didn't just start with asking them to be on my show.
Yes, exactly.
No, it didn't. So I specifically brought Clift on today because I want to talk about who he is and what he does apart from the book first, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about you all as the book later. So Clift, if you will, share with my audience, who is Clift Townsend and how did you come to be who you are today?
Okay, so how I came to be how I am today, I'm not going to go into the full story, but like most people in this arena, and yourself included, there was some point in your life, in our lives, when we had an awakening, that moment. And it was approximately 10 years ago that I had that moment, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I said, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm so bad beyond that. I'm disgusted. Something have to change. And I decided at that moment that I was going to change. And I realized when in my moment, I went from weakness to strength to power, all in within that time. And within my strength, I said, you know what? I'm going to find a way to change my life. And when I find that way, I'm going to share it with people. And because there's millions of people around the world that feels that's in the similar position, but they don't know how. They can't cry. I was crying. They don't have the voice to share and to share that message like I do. And so I said, when I find that solution, whatever it is, I was going to share it. So from that day on, we're all on a mission, but from that day, I went in a different mission, in a different direction. And I decided to change my life. And so it has led to, I went deep into personal development, and which led me to being a part of the Les Brown Institute and being one of the founding members, which I'm very proud of. Spent 2 years work directly with Mr. Les Brown, the legend in the speaking business, as you know. After I left the Les Brown Institute, which was last year, I've always, part of the Les Brown Institute, I was doing speaking and training and coaching, and I've been doing that. I decided that I wanted to teach and train the speaking, in the speaking business on my own and go out. So that's where I am today. However, what got me here, just real quick, when I started speaking many years ago, I'm like most people. When you hear interviews with actors, a lot of actors will say, you know what, I'm not that person. I'm really shy. I'm really an introvert, and I was kind of that way. So what is it? How is it that you become and you show that on screen or on stage? I was looking for that because I wanted to be able to deliver to my audience what it is that they needed, not about me, but what they needed. I need to be the person that they needed to be. So I was searching for all kind of things, and I remember I went on LinkedIn one day and I looked and joined the speakers groups and stuff like that, and I asked a speaker that's been in business for years, and I asked him, I put a question on LinkedIn, and this guy responded and said, listen, Cliff, I was like you, and one thing that changed me as a speaker was taking acting lessons. And I said, okay. I looked into all the other suggestions I'd gotten. Acting was the cheapest. So I found an acting club close by me, and it just so happened, I didn't know it at the time, but it happens to be the best, one of the best acting schools in Florida, if not in the country. I didn't know it at the time. I was just looking for it. And acting changed my life, changed my speaking, changed who I am. It allowed me to take my speaking to a different level. And all of these things that I talk about in the book, and because I learned different acting styles, I learned how to deliver and fulfill the obligation, fulfill the audience's obligation. So I learned all of those things. So all of those things is a little bit of what got me here today, Valerie, to answer your question in the very spectrum.
Oh no, you did well. But what were you doing before that? I mean, there was something before that. What were you doing before you had that moment where you said, I'm done? I mean, did you just go the traditional route? You were at home, you went to school, you had a job. What did that look like?
Well, you know, and that's a question in my first book. Outside of this book, I asked myself that question because not that I asked myself what I was doing. What I was doing was I was into real estate. I had my real estate license. I had my insurance license. I've always been entrepreneurially minded, and I've always believed in working for oneself and determine your own worth. Now, the question I asked myself over the years is, where did I get that from? I really don't know where I developed that from. And I look back, and I wasn't born in Jamaica. I grew up in Jamaica. I was born in England. However, living in Jamaica, and if you know Jamaicans, naturally, a lot of them are hustlers, because that's just, from the West Indies, from third world countries, most people are hustlers because you have to do things just to survive, right? And I remember my mother, my mother was one of those people that believed that there's nothing a man could do that she couldn't do, you know? And I remember as a young age, she used to, you know, build houses, drive tractors. So, you know, so I was before that, I was doing all of these things, but they just were not working out. You know, I was doing all of these things. And what I realized, and I'll just share this real quick for your listeners, is what I was doing all of these different things, real estate, and people get rich in all of these areas that I mentioned: insurance, real estate, selling cars. I had my own license, buying and selling cars from the auction, all of these things, right? All of these things, we know people make millions of dollars from these things, all of these things. However, I wasn't having a success. What I realized is like what most people do. It's not, and that's what I train people on today, one of the biggest thing, it's not what you do. It's doing things, it's doing that particular thing in a certain way. And to be able to do things in a certain way, you have to develop a certain mindset. To develop a certain mindset, that means you have to eliminate that way of thinking because whether you're 25, 35, 55, most people have that level of thinking from when we were children, and that same thinking and that same mentality, that same belief, that same philosophy we live with today. So in order to do something different, you have to be able to change your thinking, and you have to look yourself in the mirror and evaluate your beliefs and say, are these beliefs serving me today? Are these helping me to get towards my goals? And if they're not, then reject them. Even though you've been with them for 25, 35 years, reject those beliefs and install new beliefs. And so, because that is the only way you're going to be able to do things in a certain way, which is going to get to you success. So I was doing all of those things, but I was not having success. And that's what, all of that is what compounded and led to that night. And I said, listen, something's got to change. It's not, I was doing all the right things. I just wasn't doing it in a certain way. And so all of those things is what led to that night. So yes, I was working, doing all, you know, I was doing wholesale real estate and regular real estate. I was buying and selling cars. I was doing the insurance. I was doing everything, you know, all of those things, but just wasn't coming together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I all of that you said, I think that's what a lot of us do, because we're just out there, just doing it, trying to make it, doing something that we've seen other people do and be successful, right?
Yes.
But we had not done that deep work to say, okay, what's really important to me? What is my thing that I want to do that's going to really, because I mean, money is great, but if you have wealth, no matter what your definition of that is, but you're not happy and content and solid in who you are, it really does come out in your life that way. People can people can tell it. You can be successful in doing things as far as the world considers success, but can you sleep at night?
Yes.
Are you peaceful in your spirit, right? When you're trying to do things that are not authentically who you are. And then we don't know who that person is because, like what you said, we have a lot of things that are in us that came to us externally from other people's thoughts and ideas and dreams, not necessarily ours. So we've all got to have that moment when we realize, wait, and start challenging, like you said, every single thought. So yeah, that's awesome. That's how that happens. And so when you started your academy, what was your biggest challenge when you started that? Because everybody isn't ready to tell their story. Everybody doesn't want to be authentic. They want to do something. They might want to be a speaker. They might want to be a writer, but we want to live in fairy tale land. We don't really want to, open up and disclose. So how did you meet that challenge?
Well, let me tell you what it was for me. And I realized that back to acting, I was not, before acting, I was like most people, not willing to go there. I was being safe, right? And there are certain things I wouldn't share. And as a speaker, there's still certain things you should not share. You can share certain things, but don't go to the edge, but don't jump off, because you can easily turn your audience from you. If you go too far into a story, you don't want to get into the gory details. You want to take them where you want to build up their emotion, but you don't want to, like I said, go to the edge of the cliff, but don't jump off. And a lot of speakers jump off the cliff because sometimes you can be too real, too authentic. If that's what it is. I know some people like that they think that just telling everything is just being authentic. No, you need to stop sometime. So before acting, I was not that. And that's why I said acting was the best thing that ever happened to me. Acting gave me the opportunity the freedom, the confidence to be able to express myself. Let me tell you something, a quick story. I didn't know my father growing up. And like I said, I grew up in Jamaica, spent most of the time in Jamaica. My father was in England, and I met him once. When I went back to England, left Jamaica and went back to England when I was 13 years old, finished high school in England. And when I went back to England, I remember my brother took me on a double-decker bus and we drove through London. And he didn't tell me where he was taking me. He just says, let's go for a ride. And we ended up at this house in a place called Norwood, and 3-story houses, brownstones. And I remember we went up into the second floor, went in the house, and we went to the second floor, and there's this man laying on the bed, this old man laying on the bed. And he called me over. At that time, I realized it's my father. It's the first time I'm meeting him, right? And I don't remember what he said, because at that time I had no conversation. It meant nothing to me. This is just a man laying in bed look sick, right? And he gave me some money. I don't even know how much, because by the time we got out the door, my older brother took it from me. I don't even know, but I didn't have a problem having him because it meant nothing to me. And so I tell that story because in acting over the years, I didn't realize how much that affected me, not knowing my father. And acting brought that out of me. I cried for the very first time in an acting class. And I talked about it, and I allowed myself to. It's like taking the burden off, and all of these things that's built up over the years. It's the funny thing is, not the funny thing, but my acting coach, the reason why I said it was the best thing is, not only was she an actor, but in her past life, she was a therapist. She was a psychotherapist, and she became a psychotherapist because that's what her parents wanted her to do. And so she did that, from Jewish background, they wanted her to, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer. So she became the doctor, right? And she did it to please her family because she's always wanted to be an actor. And she did it. She built a successful business and she sold it. Well, no, one day she went to her mother and father. She says, okay, I lived your life long enough. I became what you want me to be. I'm done. I'm selling it. I've fulfilled that obligation. I'm selling my business. I'm going to Hollywood. I'm going to California, and I'm going to live my life. And that's what she did. And she hasn't looked back since now. Is she making the kind of money? No, but she's living her life. And so I bring it up because the fact that she was a psychotherapist is she's not just an acting coach, but she knows the human mind and human behavior. So in her classes, after I go to her classes, sometimes it's like I felt like I was in a therapy. That's how you feel. So I cried for the first time, and acting is what allowed me to be able to share stories and be able to undress myself. And now I can do it on stage. And that's why, that's one thing that I teach people about how to create. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to touch on this later, create an alter ego, because that's what you need when you're not that person, but you need to be somebody else. You create that and you learn and you build tools, just like a plumber has tools. As a speaker, as an actor, we have tools, and these are emotional tools that we can draw upon to fulfill an obligation based on what it is that we need. So acting is how I was able to do that.
Yeah, now that's good. See, you just walked us all the way through that. And that's wonderful, that we can have those moments, that you were able to have that moment. I know that I didn't call it speaking. Of course, I called it ministry. We weren't churched as young children, but I got my relationship with the Lord started when I was grown and gone away from home. And so I was always shy. I can talk to anybody as long as I was down here with you. But if you elevate me and people are looking at me, oh, that's a problem. And so in church, it started, because it were small churches, it started with just teaching Sunday school. And in teaching Sunday school is when I started sharing things about my life, when I found that something inside that Sunday school story would hit a side of me, then I would start sharing about my life. And what you're saying is absolutely right. Sometimes if you go too far in that story, you start losing what you were really trying to do. So you got to kind of know how to reel yourself back in. If you feel yourself going down that road, you gotta kind of feel it. You got to kind of know. And watching your audience will do that for you a lot. Looking at them, you know, and paying attention. But before we go on to the next part, Cliff, I want to address my audience for just a moment. I want to remind my viewing and listening audience that I'm Valerie Gilchrist. This is Esther's Purpose. My guest today is Clift Townsend. We've been having a great conversation about storytelling and how he became who he is today. I also want to remind you that WYTV7 is a nonprofit organization. You can go to WYTV7.org, click the donate button, donate to us. Those funds not only go so that we can continue having programs like Esther's Purpose, all the other broadcasters, but also those funds are used to support other nonprofit organizations as well. So know that we're serving the community that we're in. So Cliff, so now I want to talk about the book. Yes. So you are a co-author. There's 32 authors to this book. You are a co-author of Speak Up.
Best-selling co-author.
I'm sorry?
Best-selling co-author.
Best-selling co-author, y'all. Get that right now.
Yes, right.
Best-selling co-author. Speak Up, the ultimate guide to dominate in the speaking industry. Now, I said when I was interviewing Brian when he was on the show, I was going to read this Les Brown, what Les Brown had to say about this book. But I don't know why I didn't, but now it's been brought back to my remembrance. And I think because I have Cliff on here, because Cliff was actually very close to him, knows him, worked with him. So I want to read what he said.
What Les said, okay.
And so Les said, there are people waiting to hear your voice. You have an energy signature. And when you speak, there are people who are in a dark place right now, but when they hear your voice, they will come out into the light. When I got my copy, because as soon as it was released, I immediately ordered my copy and had it the next day. I think I was probably one of the first ones kidding. But when I read that quote, that just spoke volumes to me. And it immediately, I thought about you, because we actually have a relationship outside of that where we've had many conversations. But I want your part in this book talks about educate, entertain, and inspire. How to tell stories like award-winning actors. You have a quote in here by Maya Angelou that says, I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And so, Cliff, I go out there on a limb and say that when we're speaking as speakers, whatever we're doing, even in writing, isn't that really what we're trying to do, is touch the heart of people? Isn't that what we're doing and helping them in that process? Or is that not right?
No, that is it, because the only way, based on that quote what you just said, the only way you can do that, you know, people remember how you make them feel. The only way you can do that is by stories. It really is. And what it is, you are doing that because remember, when you're speaking, there's people in the audience. They may not say nothing, but there's people in the audience that's listening to you and say, you know what? They're saying me too. If it wasn't for this situation, that could have easily been me, or I could see how I could be in that situation. And there's people. So one of the things that I say is, you are the voice sometimes for the voiceless, because there's people. Remember when I told you that I woke up in the middle of the night and I said I was gonna, be the voice for people who could not share their message? That's what this, when you're on stage, because when you deliver the message, there's people that for whatever reason, are not in a position to share their voice and to share their message, and you delivering that message is inspiring people. Sometimes you inspire people to speak up, but sometimes you just inspire them and then they never raise their hands. You'll never know, but you've inspired them. So yes, that is what you want to do. So as a speaker, whether you speak in front of 1 or 1,000, it doesn't matter. What you're doing, you're affecting and changing people's lives. And that's my mission, really. It's really, if you read most of what I say, my mission is to affect and change people's lives all over the world. And that's why I do the things that I do in the way that I do it, with the academy, because I want to reach people, not just in the US, but I want to touch people in India, in Australia, in Russia, in England, wherever it is. I want to help people, and especially specifically right now, women. And the reason why women, by the way, is because when I woke up about 10 years ago in the middle of the night, and I saw a vision of people who, the voiceless, that physical picture, that vision, were primarily women that were not, for whatever reason, maybe because of culture, religion, whatever the reason, just felt that. And so my mission has been, and I've been kind of holding it back, which I shared with you, a couple of days ago. But now, and listen, talking about that's a good point, because it doesn't matter where we are, we all still have work to do, and I'm still working. I'm still a work in progress. But yes, that is what it's about, telling stories, because you're helping people that you may not even know that you're helping and touching lives.
Yep, that is absolutely right. So I want to talk about these 3 keys to effective storytelling that you talk about in this book. So, and he's not going to give you all the secret sauce now. Y'all have to buy the book. But we're going to touch on it a little bit. Now, we've talked about key number 1, actually, and that is be authentic, right?
Yes.
And he's already talked to you about, tell your story, but, bring it in now. Don't go too far into it, and change, what's going on with your audience. But you said something here where in the book, you said, if you are not authentic, your listener will sense it and they will shut you out. Talk about that a little bit, Cliff.
Yes. One of the things that I've noticed is a lot of people get in the speaking business feel that they have to imitate other people who they see as being successful, and even down to the voice. I know people who use Les Brown's quote and voice and gestures, and I see them on stage and I'm like, yeah, that's Les Brown. But there's only one Les Brown. There's only one Clift Townsend. There's only one Valerie Gilchrist. So you need to be authentic. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't take things from them, but make it your own. Les Brown used quotes. You can use quotes, but not Les Brown is known for that. So when you're not being yourself, what your audience is attracted about you, when you're being vulnerable and telling your story, it's your story. So, and we can get into that. It doesn't necessarily have to be your story, but you're telling the story, and you need to be authentic. You need to be yourself, because your audience will respect you for being yourself. Because you know what? If they wanted to see somebody else tell a story, they go see somebody else. But if they're there for you, then they expect to see you. And if you're not being yourself, they can easily pick up on that. If you're trying to be something else than somebody else, and I hear sometimes people curse or people say things, but that's not you. You're trying to to rile up the audience, but that's not you. You can learn to and see, that's why sometimes people take it a little bit too far. But what the bottom line is, you have to be yourself, and because if you're not, the audience will really tune in on that, and they'll tune you out, because they don't like fake. Nobody likes fake. I came to see you. I want to see you. I want to hear your story. I want to hear it from your perspective. You can quote other people, you can talk about other people, but I want to hear you.
Yes, absolutely. And because there's an image that we want to be, because we've rejected whatever image of ourselves that we've had all this time. Because again, it still wasn't our authentic self. It was created by situations, circumstances,
yes,
how we were reared. this person that you become. So until you take that opportunity to really find out and then accept you and love you, that's why it's so difficult for most of us to be authentic, because we don't even know who that person is, right?
I love that. I love that. So yeah, to be authentic, you first have to know who you are to be authentic yourself. Because if we follow what other people's and TV and social media, what's supposed to be, what this life is supposed to be, we try to be all the things. Let me tell you what I've done just real quick. I've kind of shut down social media. Not that I shut down, but I mean by that, for my business, I use it. But just in general, just go and see what other people, I don't do it, because there's people out there that's and I know them personally, and they're saying, hey, I'm doing this, and I know they're not living that life. And somewhat talking to myself personally, taking responsibility. Sometimes, you know, when I see people, I'm like, okay, but I'm not there. I'm not, you know, I'm not living this great life. But, you know, so I shut it down. Let me do me. And as long as you do the work, just do the work that you're supposed to do, it'll all come together. So, you know, it's a good point you make, but you got to first learn how, you know, to be yourself first and who you are.
Absolutely. Your second key. Now here's a tough one. Emotional vulnerability. You put in here, and this is what you said, there is a fine line when it comes to being emotionally vulnerable. Do not use your audience as your therapist. This rule should never be broken. Talk about that to us, Clift.
Okay, some people may not like this, what I'm about to say, but it is the truth. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear, right?
Right.
And this is specifically more so 97% towards women, because this is where I mostly see it, and especially in networking events, right? Where you go and a lady would get up to speak and they tell their story and they take it, they break down, they're telling their story, right? And they start to cry, you know, and the audience comes in like, oh, it's okay, tap them on the shoulder, oh, go ahead, it's okay. No, stop it. You know, it might be okay in that environment, but I guarantee you one thing, not one person in that room, woman or man, would ever recommend you to come and talk in front of their organization because you broke down. You might be okay in that, and they might pat you on the shoulder, but if they go to work on Monday and their boss say, listen, we're having a conference, a once-a-year conference, and we need to speak, I don't care how expert that person was, but they broke down, you'll never recommend that person. And the reason why, because they broke down, and you don't look bad, so you'll never bring that person into your organization. It is not professional. And that's what I talk about. Go to the edge, but don't jump off. This is exactly what I mean. And when you cry, you jump off the edge. Because here's one thing that Les Brown always talked about, and his daughter, Ona Brown. If it's a story that you can't emotionally control, then don't go there. Practice at home. Practice telling it at home in front of a mirror until you can get there. And if there's a certain part that's too emotionally for you, then stop there. You know, don't go there. So this is the rule. Don't ever break this rule. Don't ever go over the edge. You know, do not use your audience as a therapist. They're not your therapist. You are there as an expert, and you're sharing the message, you deliver the message, and the role reverse, because now they're comforting you, and they're there comfort when it should be the way around. You, the expert, act professional, and so that's what that means. You know, and you know, women, sometimes when I share this, some women will disagree because like, oh, but you know, when I did it, I cried, and everybody was like, you know, so thoughtful. Yes, they are, and it's okay in that environment. But has anyone ever recommend you to come to talk in their organization? The answer is no, because they won't, because you broke down, and they'll never bring you in front of an organization that's run by a man either, because they're looking at, you know, you broke down, and listen, you here to deliver some message, give me some knowledge, whatever. I didn't come here to see you cry. I didn't come here to, you know, so you have to be professional about it, you know. But on that same thing, you have to get your audience engaged, you do have to get emotional, but just don't go too far. You have to get them where you feel it personally, but not to where you lose control. And that's what I mean.
Very good. Absolutely. Now, I want to give you an opportunity because we're drawing to a close, and I know that there is a third part, but we kind of touched on that a little bit about creating that alter ego. Yeah. So what I want you to talk about before we close is your Boss Academy. I want you to talk about that and then share with us how, with my audience, how they can contact you. If they want to coach, they want more information about you, they want to contact you and ask you questions or whatever that is, however that looks. Talk to us about your Boss Academy for Women, and then let them know how to reach you.
Yeah, Boss Academy for Women, it's an online, offline platform, and I will share. So I'm doing, the online is live events, of course, conferences, which I'm working on a conference in South Florida, in the West Palm Beach area in August. And the online event, the online platform is, of course, courses. And what I'm going to be doing is, and I've started doing it already, is bringing female experts that are experts, subject matter experts in all areas. Basically, it's a one-stop shop. What I'm building is the most resourceful and supportive platform for women to help them develop in their personal and professional life. So that's what it's going to be. It's going to be hundreds of courses and different levels of membership. So for everyone, and for people to reach me, you can go to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Boss Academy for Women. And bossacademyforwomen.com, and on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere, Boss Academy for Women.
Okay. All right. I didn't know you were going to be able to tell me that quick. So we got a couple more minutes, because I wanted you to talk a little more briefly about that, creating an alter ego. Because I know when you and I first talked and you talked about that, it took me a minute to get that, to kind of understand what you meant by that. Can you give them a short synopsis on what does that mean, so that they can stand and be professional and not dive over the cliff, getting all emotional, by maybe using this technique, this key number 3? Talk about that a little bit, Clift.
Well, I'll share. When I was at Les Brown Institute, I was coaching most of the speakers, and we had events a couple of times a year, and part of the event was bringing the members to speak, and a lot of these people had not spoken before. I remember there's one particular young lady that I was coaching, and she was she was a mother, wife, and just very shy. And one of the things, it was very hard for her to share her story. She wanted to share her story about how she's working and living for her 2 girls, and but she wasn't able to bring that story out, and she wasn't able to tell it in a way confidently. So one of the things I said to her, and this is how I use this technique, I said to her, if there's somebody you could be that could tell this story, who's that person to you? And she said, Beyonce. Because Beyonce's confidence, Beyonce is on stage and she's doing, and I says, okay, so let's adopt that Beyonce. What is Beyonce, what would Beyonce do? How would Beyonce tell this story? If you were Beyonce, how would she tell this story? What would she do? What word would she use? And we go into, and I believe there's like 12 different categories, which we're not gonna get into all now, how to develop the alter ego. But basically the bottom line is this: develop. And it doesn't have to be somebody famous, by the way. That was just a situation where that's what worked for her. And by the way, she was able to, she killed that speech, by the way, when she was able to deliver it. Because what alter ego does for you, it's when you're on stage, you are not you. You wouldn't be Valerie Gilchrist. I would not be Clift Townsend. I would be the person that I need to be able to deliver the speech. And every professional does it. There's a way to get ready before you go on stage, and that's why people look at actors when they do interviews and say, "Oh, I'm so shy," because you know what? When they're on stage and in front of the camera, Brad Pitt is not Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, in every day. He has become somebody else. He's become that character, and that's what developing an alter ego is. You become that character. So what is that character for you? And it could be, it could be a friend or uncle that's playful or that's confident, and adopt some of their personalities and say, yes, this is how I want to be. So that's what developing an alter ego is. Because one of the things we talk about in acting, and I use it in speaking, is always fulfill your obligation. What is your obligation? You need to be able to deliver a speech to your audience that is bringing them up or make them happy and jump. And if you're not that person, then you need to be that person. And that's what it is. Develop an alter ego where you can fulfill your obligation as a speaker, as a trainer, as a coach, or as an actor.
Wow. Thank you, Clift. That's amazing. I know you all got excited about listening to Clift Townsend talk about this. You can pick up that book, Speak Up, The Ultimate Guide to Dominate in the Speaking Business, in the speaking industry. Go to Amazon.com. You can get it. Great book. Great information in there for you. Thank you, Cliff, for being with us today. Hold on just a moment. You all, guys, you all can go to WYTV7.org. We have 24/7 TV now. You can go back and listen to this interview again and again and again. You can go back and listen to all my interviews all the way from the beginning when I started last August, and pick up the people that you wanted. Oh, I wish I could go back and hear that interview. Go back and get it. So also, you can go to Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, WYTV7.org, Spotify, TuneIn, Twitter, LinkedIn, BeanPod, and FM Player. You all know you can also contact me. You can go to my website, www.esterspurpose.org. You know that I'm on LinkedIn as Valerie Parker Gilchrist. Facebook is Valerie Parker Gilchrist and Esther's Purpose. You can also meet with me on Instagram, Valerie_Gilchrist and Esther's Purpose. So you can reach me on all of those social media platforms to talk to me, to coach with me, to ask me to come to be a speaker. Go to www.esterspurpose.org, and then you can contact me that way for any type of engagement that you need me. Again, Clift, thank you so very much for coming and being on my being a guest on my show. I want to thank my audience. Thank you for listening once again this week. Really appreciate you all's making sure that you connect with me every Monday night, 7:30 Eastern Time. Thank you all so very much. Great being with you all today. Have a great evening. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.